Hey folks, welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to introduce our special guest, Gerald Gangaram, a retired U.S. Army major and decorated Apache helicopter pilot whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. Raised by a single mother in Queens, New York, Gerald defied expectations and rose to become what enemies call the Dragon during Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Gerald is a 2007 West Point graduate. He commanded the world's largest attack helicopter company and earned numerous accolades, including the Meritorious Service Medal and the Army Commendation Medal with Valor. But Gerald's story goes far beyond military achievements. After suffering a traumatic brain injury and navigating some dark periods, he transformed these challenges into a philosophy of forging forward that now guides his civilian life. Today, as Vice President of Civil Leadership Development at the Bill of Rights Institute, Gerald continues his commitment to service through educational initiatives and leadership development. Whether you're interested in military aviation, leadership philosophy, or personal resilience, Gerald's unique perspective as someone who went from challenging childhood to the Pentagon Strategic Planning Office offers valuable insights for us all. Gerald, thank you for joining us today. We are eager to hear your story.
Thanks, Mike. It's so happy to be here with you.
Yes, sir. So let me start off with the first question here for you. Growing up in Queens with a single mother, many didn't expect you to succeed. Can you walk us through your journey from skeptical beginnings to becoming an Apache helicopter pilot in the U.S. Army?
It's interesting that you focused on that part in particular, Mike. You know, that skepticism was across the board. It came from, well, I grew up around teachers, even my biological fathers. I grew up in New York City, Queens. The zip code I lived in was one digit away from Rikers Island. And so if you didn't do something right, it was always, you're going to Rikers. Whether it was, hey, you didn't do good on this test, you're going to Rikers. You weren't fast enough in this game of tag, you're going to Rikers. And even at that point, when very early on, too young for me to even remember, when my biological father had left my mother, he actually told her that, you know, he's not going to amount to anything because he's with you. He was referring to facts that, you know, she didn't even have a high school education in the classic sense. But obviously he was wrong, because I learned more about leadership and resilience and grit, determination, values from my mom than I did any other leader that I've been exposed to.
Boy, you know, my mom, she did not get her 4-year degree either. She had a 2-year degree, and so she became a nurse and a phlebotomist for years. And, you know, in the back of her mind, I think she was always, you know, thinking she was less than, but she had a heart of gold, you know, the standard shirt off your back kind of person. And it sounds like your mom was similar in that capacity.
Oh, without a doubt, right? My mom had to do things that no woman should have to do to make sure that she would just provide the basic things that we could so easily take for granted. And things that put me, if it wasn't for all the sacrifices my mom gave, I wouldn't be where I am today. Especially, and I use that word sacrifice because I think so much about servant leadership, right? Like, we know the classic definition of leadership. Whenever I think about servant leadership, that's what my mom taught me. We have certain leaders that can be out there that, yes, you can possibly do things that you're trying to elevate yourself and your stature, and you're looking for that next rung on the ladder. But a true servant leader is just like my mom was. It was, what can I do to put you on my back and make sure that your life is good? I think that's the call for a lot of parents, right? And I remind people that whether you're in your community, whether it's your church, your family, you're definitely able to be a leader to someone. You're someone that you have their ear, you're getting advice, counseling and stuff. And we all can use that, those more servant leaders.
You mentioned servant leaderships. I also think about success, and your metaphor for success is quite unique. Your definition is comparing success to a washer and dryer. Could you elaborate to our listeners of how you shaped your perspective throughout your military career with this washer and dryer narrative?
Yeah, Mike. So as was previously mentioned, I didn't grow up in the same socioeconomic status I'm in now. And so even when I go to West Point, the only reason I really got in was I had this mentor that did take an interest in me. I had 3 mentors while I was in high school. I was in a JRC program. It was sort of first class BATS, Master Sergeant Badia, and a First Sergeant Gogarty. First Sergeant comes up one day. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing for college?" And I kind of laughed at him and I said, "First Sergeant, I can't afford to apply to college, let alone go to college. So I don't know what you're talking about." He told me about one school that didn't have an application fee. That was West Point. And that's how my path there really went. I still remember it to this day because he even gave me the money for Post-it. And it blew my mind in that way that someone like this would take an interest in me. But I went to West Point, graduated, thankfully, became an aviation officer. And then I went to go to flight school, and I had to find a place to live. And so I would tell everyone actually, Mike, that I was going to LA, Lower Alabama. I didn't want them to think any stereotypical thing of, oh, the New York City guy is now going to the middle of nowhere in my mind, right? I hadn't really been in a lot of other parts of the country. And so it was a culture shock to me in different ways is what I was expecting. But in reality, not really. And I get there, but I find a roommate that I knew at West Point, and we get a townhouse in Lower Alabama. And I actually thought at that point in my life, I was like, no, I'm a man. Because this place had amenities. And I'm talking about central air conditioning. I mean, even West Point have central air conditioning. All right. I'm not starting off the projects. I'm not starting off the apartment. This is great. I'm in a house. Yes, a townhouse in Lower Alabama with a roommate. But I was past all the fine print. I did what every man at that point in their life is when they're really proud. I called my mom, and she was excited, actually. She was so excited. She drove from New York City down to Lower Alabama to see this townhouse with my roommate. And you know what? She got there after over 18 hours, take a grand tour. And she was happy and she was proud. But then as we get out, she notices there's a room she hadn't gone into yet, right? As we're getting towards the door, she opens it up, sees the washer and the dryer. Like, my mom got very emotional on this. Grabs me and she says, "Boy, made it, boy." I may or may not have got emotional at the same time, if you ask my roommate. He was probably very confused, but what was going on at that point is I realized my mom still didn't have a washer and a dryer. The washer and I thought that was so important for me to recognize. I hadn't yet become that Apache pilot. I hadn't yet commanded. I hadn't yet strategist, got my master's degree, none of that. But it didn't matter to my mom reminded me that I already had achieved success just by virtue of that one act that I had achieved. And I decided I needed to really carry that with me because as leaders, it's so easy to get to another rung on the ladder as you go through life and you keep reaching for another thing in success. And that's good. You should keep moving the goalposts, but you should also make sure to celebrate all those victories because every one of us has had success in our lives. I don't care if it was learning to tie your shoes, asking someone out on a date, doing well on a test, job you finally wanted, you name it. And there's been some measures of success in your life. And we just have to remember that as we really go into times that maybe it's not so clear what those successes are. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that maybe today's not a successful day, right?
Brother, I love that story because we are always seeking that next thing to validate ourselves. As a young captain, okay, how many years do I have to be a captain before I can become a major? Okay, I've made major, and if I want to be a commander in the Air Force, I got to be a lieutenant colonel. Okay, well, I need to rank this or that on my performance report, and I have to do this level of fitness test. Otherwise, I'm somehow a failure in my own mind. And so it's so nice to hear your mom bring you back to what success is defined in her capacity. A lot of folks that are listeners, they've perhaps never been in New York City or these large cities where a lot of folks are going to the laundromat. So you have to be pretty wealthy to have those types of things in your apartment complex in New York City. So good for your mom to keep you grounded and allow you to measure success in a different capacity.
Oh, I'm so grateful for the lesson.
Yeah. Well, You mentioned the West Point, and I don't want to gloss over your experience there, because you said, hey, I've never even considered myself worthy of going to college. You obviously were a pretty sharp student, because our service academies are unbelievably competitive. The folks that follow the U.S. News reports of all the rankings of the schools, our service academies tend to be in that top 20 year after year. So you must have been a pretty sharp student. What did he see in you, or what were you specializing in that would allow you to even go to the service academy? Because you have to get congressional sponsorship. Who was your sponsor to get you into the academy?
My sponsor actually was President Bush.
So President Bush. I didn't even realize that presidents could have appointments. I thought it was always the Senate, the Congress.
I didn't either. That was one of those things. President Bush gave me my nomination. I had also applied to senator, representatives, and it was one of those things for me that, looking back on it, I didn't appreciate that West Point was the hardest school in the world to get into that. It was really because of September 11th. I knew that I wanted to serve. Knew I wanted to go into the military. I knew what it meant to be a citizen. My mom, when September 11th happened, she went out and she got this flag. It's like kind of banner on the bottom of it that said "America, love her, leave." And she always believed in those words. She always believed that so many people wanted to come into this country just like she did. And they wanted to have opportunity. America's not perfect, but the Constitution that this country is founded on gives us the ability to strive for that perfection, to always improve ourselves. All the iterations that we can have to continue to model our government, the checks and balances that are in place. And the way she saw it was any attack on the country, we had to rally around each other, our community, and support anything that was going on. Not want me to go into the military. Let's be clear about that. I don't think any mother really does. But that really drove all my thinking about going to the service academies or going into the military. And when this mentor told me about the service academies and saw this inkling of leadership in me, it really changed things for me. And it reminded me that, it's one thing to say, oh, I'm good at singing and I'm just singing in the shower. It's another thing when other people tell you, hey, you have this gift and you should use it. And that's what leadership was for me. And it was those teachers that took that interest in me, that didn't see it as, you're going to prison, just do what you're doing. They really invested in me, and I'm very thankful for that.
What grade were you in when 9/11 happened?
It was in 2001. I was sophomore.
You were a sophomore in high school. Being in Queens, New York, what was the reaction? Can you describe what the city was like while this was happening and those immediate 72 hours afterwards?
Uncertainty, disbelief. Everyone was wondering where people were. The towers had our communications for cell phones and that structure as well. Not like everyone had a cell phone like they could even now. Payphones were working in certain areas, but lines were incredibly long. They had shut down the subways and everything. So in our case, people that we knew that were coming back had to walk back from wherever they were in the city. Anyone that was working around the area had to walk back across the bridges. Traffic was only going with military vehicles and emergency vehicles into the city or even out of the city. Nothing was really going out. Things were just going in, whatever resources they needed. And it was just, what was going to happen? What would the response be? What is this going to mean for life in general? I've still to this day never seen something that really just had everyone glued to whatever TV or radio and stuff, just trying to get more information, see what was going to happen, what the next steps were going to be. But then there was this overwhelming, I'm sure you remember, Mike, there was this overwhelming sense of patriotism about no, an attack on one of us like this is an attack on all of us. And that rallying feeling, that wasn't specific to just a small town or anything, but the community was the nation. That was also inspiring.
Specifically remember the Yankees game. There was a lot of back and forth about, oh, we shouldn't play, we need to cancel this. Because, I mean, they were using the field to for triaging bodies, and it was a very traumatic experience of what the field was used for. But when they actually had that game, I feel like it brought the whole country together. That baseball game provided just so much pride in me when I watched them actually play recently after the towers fell.
You know, I think that is a sentiment that a lot of leaders that are very in tune with their communities know when it's time to, I don't want to say move forward callously, but time to bring people together. Not even for a sense of normalcy or things, but just to have people have those victories and things, right? It's almost giving those, even if it's a small victory and another measure of success, to show that, yeah, this may have happened. Look, we can successfully have this one thing happen, and we can show not that we're forgetting what happened and we're dismissing it or anything, but we can do multiple things. We can mourn, we can rebuild, and we can still forge forward.
So 9/11 really puts a fire in your belly, and you go to the service academy. How were you selected to be an Apache helicopter pilot? Me being a C-17 guy in the Air Force, it was a very competitive process. I imagine it's similar in the Army.
I mean, brother, it's probably not that different from your journey. What we did was, it's an order of merit list for everything in the military, right? So when we go to the service academy, it's an order of merit list. You're getting racked and stacked against everyone for what your branch is going to be. Then you get to flight school, that order of merit list is wiped, and you start a new one. While you're going through flight school, you have a new order of merit list. And that's, in the end, what ended up being whoever was at the top of the class and stuff. As we go through, we'll come into a room at your primary aircraft graduation. They put all the aircraft on a board, what slots are there. They call you by name in your order of merit list. You go up to the board, you take which aircraft is going to be yours. And in my case, I was just hoping not only that they would have Apache slots, but I was hoping that I was going to be competitively enough ranked to be one of them. Because especially at the time that I was going through, it was a very competitive aircraft, yet thankfully it worked out.
That thing, the Apache, is an absolute beast. I spent 5 years flying the MQ-1, the unmanned aircraft out of Las Vegas, and we carry 2 Hellfire missiles, but I know you guys carry Hellfire missiles as well. Can you describe the armament that you guys are loaded down with for missions?
Oh, can I describe the aircraft that I like? It's not that I don't admire the thing. That actually is that background image is a painting that one of my soldiers made for me when I left command. Again, that's a painting, not a photo. He was an instructor pilot. I just had such an attention to detail. I'm sure get like always threatened to fire it. That aircraft is awesome. Just like you're saying, something that could rank the most advanced helicopter in the world by even Discovery Channel. There are movies about this thing. I think they wanted to make it a transformer at one point, with good reason, right? The smallest armament I have on is a 30 millimeter cannon. And this thing it's about, the 30 millimeter is about that long, about that round. And when it makes contact with something like the ground or a target, it blows up into a 15-meter radius. It's a steel slug that also has penetrating power of 2 inches of rolled homogeneous armor when you're thinking about tank armor and stuff. But then it's like a grenade. And anywhere that I move my head, that gun can move with my head. I pull the trigger, and again, that thing is one lethal grenade. Not one of those come out. At least 20, if not 100, come out when I pull that trigger. I mean, talk about munition right there. And that's the smallest thing. That's not on top of the rockets that we have that come in all different varieties, everything from blow things up, light up the sky, machetes that are nails really onto battlefields. And then you have those Hellfire missiles, again, same types that you guys carried on those unmanned aircraft. And I mean, fully armed Apache has 16 of them on just one Apache. Flying teams of 2. A battalion is 8 of them. You start doing the math, And that's a lot of Hellfire missiles that can lock onto different targets. And as quickly as you can do this is how quickly nukes can go to their primary targets and secondary. Unbelievably impressive aircraft.
So just like the A-10 in the Air Force, which creates immediate fear, I imagine you guys are the same way. So tell us how you got this this term, this call sign, the closer.
Oh, closer. Oh, that's an interesting one. That was a name given to me by a major that I served with when I was a lieutenant and then rising captain. They knew me while I was a captain. My first unit, I at some point started doing things where if there was some no-fail mission that others may have tried to do or didn't get enough attention and there had to be a short time to get it done, I was brought in to finish it off. And once I started getting a reputation for that, I actually thought it was a name he was only using just with me. And then finally, not only did he start writing it in my evaluations for different things, but I've heard him use it in different staff meetings and otherwise. We're just like, oh yeah, no, we know who we were talking about. And so that was a interesting thing for me to even realize at that moment that I kind of had this without trying to get it. And I needed, and started off just a lot of investigations that needed to get done. And at one point even became taking over a staff section that needed to get reformed. And I was actually grateful for all the weird positions it put me in, things that really had nothing to do with my job as a Apache pilot or a direct leader. All of a sudden meant that I got a very wide range of experience.
When we evacuated Afghanistan, which still hurts me to this day, I was watching the pred feed of some C-17s that were taking off, evacuating all the refugees. And there were so many people surrounding the airfield. People were climbing onto the C-17. They were walking in front of the airplane as it's taxiing out. There was hundreds, if not thousands, of people all over the runway, to the point where they called in Apaches to clear the runway. Not to shoot at anybody. No one was harmed, but the Apache was used as a clearing mechanism just so these C-17s could take off. Do you have any friends in that community that were part of the Afghanistan evacuation?
Yes. Again, having the positions that I did meant that I was able to touch a wide variety of. For the 2 years that I was in charge of flight school, you couldn't graduate and become a pilot unless I signed a certificate, pretty much giving you that license. And I did have people that I wasn't directly involved with, but I had people that I know that were part of those operations. And whenever you went through flight school while I was the commander there, I made sure to at least try and get to every class at least 6 times, right? Once a month in the Apache course. And my reason for that, I always told them, was I have no idea what you're going to face. I don't know what the moral thing might be in front of you, what tactical thing can be in front of you, what scenario in general. There's no way I can train you for everything. I hope that we can talk through some different vignettes and some different things that have happened with me, so you can definitely arch your quarterback. Like, break it down as much as you want here, where it's a safe environment and we can talk through it. And I hope the one thing you take out of it is do whatever works for you in that moment. You can come back home, look at yourself in the mirror, no matter what that may mean at the time. Again, battle, that fog of war is real, and that limited information, and you know this going from as low ranking as you were at different points to looking at very high ranks that you have been considered for, with how it doesn't matter how high you get, you have to trust the person that is closest to the bottom, closest to the action to make the decision, even if it's not what you would have told them to do otherwise, because they have the most relevant information. And we rightfully have to train our subordinate commanders to do that. We need to make sure that they are armed as much as they can with that commander's intent that we can give them. But why, right? I hate whenever I always heard people, and I know you remember this, Mike, how many times did you hear, don't ask why? Like, we don't have time to tell you why. if there's one question you need to have time to give, it's why. Because without the why and the commander's intent, when the mission goes out the window and that whole plan means if I know why you are doing it, I can change and make different directions.
My time in OSD policy, Office of Secretary of Defense policy, I was working force development, and I had this really good boss. He said, Mike, we can come up with the greatest strategy and ideas possible that we think of here in this, in this castle on the hill. But he said, if it's not executable for the soldier, the sailor, or the airman, all the strategy is completely pointless. So it was nice to have somebody there to always remind you, hey, don't forget that policy actually has to be executable. So that was always helpful to remember. And so, you mentioned leadership. While you were the commander of the Firebirds, you developed the leadership philosophy of don't serve fires, know your people, draw fires so others can maneuver. Can you describe that?
Yeah, so that became my command philosophy, and that grew out of me not knowing what the hell I was doing when I was young. I thankfully had all those different experiences where I didn't fail, thankfully, but I made mistakes, and I learned different things about myself, how I could operate as a leader, and just leadership in general, and what was required to build consensus and teams. That first part, don't serve fires. So much of my time leading, no matter what my job was at different points, became what emergency is happening right now that needs my attention. And I had to remember that it wasn't the fires that brought me into this command, it was the people. So anytime something negative was happening or an emergency was happening, I actually made it my goal that for every one of those, I tried to single out 3 different people in my organization to thank them for whether it was having to do with that fire incident or something else. I would call someone's wife and say, hey, thanks so much for letting Joe stay late today. At first, it threw them off because they got a phone call from the commander. They're like, oh my gosh, is Joe okay? And I was like, okay. We need to get past if the commander calls something bad might be happening to your spouse. So once we did that, it was something that I just wanted to try and find a way to reward them, whether it's picking up the phone and reward, something like that. Knowing your people, really knowing your people help with that, where I try to, as much as possible, and I've done this whether I've been on different boards or otherwise, I try to have lunch or dinner or stuff with them and their families if I could, kind of get away from that office environment or just know, hey, what's really important to you? What are those goals? Everyone's going to have professional goals, fine, great. But what are those personal goals? At some point, you're going to take off the uniform, you're going to take off whatever suit you're having at that office and stuff. And then what do you want later on with that? I really wanted to try and figure out what personal or family goals can I help with? Or can I hold someone accountable to? And then finally that draw fire so others can maneuver. You don't have to be in the front seat of the match and draw fire for others. What I mean by that is there's so many times I realized my job as a leader was to just take someone yelling at me or take some type of heat off of the people that worked with me on things because they had a job to do, and I almost needed to be that shield and buffer for them. Just do whatever they needed. Sometimes it was falling on my sword. Other times it was just having the courage to be able to say no, or can we do it another way? Can it happen at another time? You're always going to have to answer your bosses, and that's part of a lot of things. But I saw it as, I'm not doing this for an evaluation. I'm doing it. I serve with it. I think it was Truman that said, do your duty and history will do you justice. And I thought about that. It was about the evaluations about my men and women that serve.
That's where the Army excels and the Air Force lags behind. The Air Force is so focused on the weapon system expert, and thankfully over the last couple of decades, they've been starting to recognize that, hey, taking care of that airman. So for you providing that top cover and really getting to know them on a personal level, they will go to the ends of the earth for you. And I don't know if we learned that from the Army, but we've really started to embrace that now in the Air Force, and it just pays dividends. People, I reach out to folks that worked for me years ago on a regular basis, just because of those relationships. They make a difference. So good on you, brother.
I mean, you know it firsthand. You make friends for life with that common struggle that we go through at different points, right? Like all of that. You think back to how we even choose to do basic training. yes, everyone hates the drill sergeant, but they all bond together hating the drill sergeant, right? And there's so many moments that you have like that when you're in the military and also outside of the military, when you're going through some project, some deadline, some type of adversity together. It really can bring people together. I think that's such a good thing. Yes, the Air Force is full of technical and tactical experts. That is the whole mission of the Air Force in different ways, and officers are groomed so much towards it, where on the Army side, it's the exact opposite. It's all about leadership, and that's what you need to be. And we really rely more on our non-commissioned officers to have that, like, how to get things done as their role. And basically, we're going to try to meet more in the middle with different things and figure all that stuff out. But I think leadership for me will always be this.
So your career, you're crushing it. You're flying helicopters. You've been a commander. You're on the upward path for future opportunities. What happened?
Oh, that is I ask myself that all the time. Said I was that Apache helicopter pilot, and then when I went from soaring to all of a sudden being flat on my face, there's an impact. All of a sudden I realized I'm going in and out of consciousness. I'm getting wheeled through some hospital corridors. I wake up and there's a nurse finishing some stitches on my face. I had a traumatic brain injury. I had axial facial fracture. I lost teeth. Couldn't move my arm, move my right arm, my left arm. Feet weren't responding to me. And I started off with just asking her, where's my co-pilot? Where's my wingman? Are they okay? Who was I with? Was it this guy? I'm all over the place. She's just looking at me, and this expression comes over her, and she finally says, "You weren't in the aircraft." Still the man answers, "You weren't in the aircraft. Wasn't the Taliban. You're not even in Afghanistan. You're on the streets of DC, and you got taken out by a cop that was a pain." I'm tremendously confused at this point. I don't know what year it is. Obviously, I didn't realize how bad things were. A cop that it wasn't a lights and siren situation. He wasn't paying attention for whatever reason, and he got a traffic ticket in the end for it. He was found at fault, but it was something that destroyed my life. I felt it would eventually destroy my military career. It destroyed my family setting at the time. It destroyed my health, the injuries that I sustained. And what I hadn't realized in that exact moment, but I would a few minutes later when they were bringing me to get some more x-rays and MRIs done because I told them I couldn't move my arms. They asked me what my name and date of birth was. Again, the standard question you ask anyone right before they get some type of scan done. I just started crying. I didn't know my name. Person next to me says, "Gerald, it's going to be okay." I didn't realize at that point that was a friend that had got a message about my GPS location. My friends, my watch had sent out a GPS signal actually to my friends and let them know where I was. It didn't say what was happening. It just kind of gave said emergency, gave a GPS location, and this group of friends tracked it down to the hospital. Hospital didn't even have my name on file. But they were saying, "No, he's here," and they got to me. And thankfully, they were rotating through who was staying with me, and this person reminded me of who I was. And I actually started repeating my name, rank, and serial number over and over to myself when she reached over.
Like you're a POW.
SEER training kicked in, like, that's exactly what it was, probably. And yeah, maybe it was a little bit of thinking I was a POW, but honestly, when I look back on that moment a little, I kept worrying that if I didn't repeat it to myself over and over and over again, I would forget it again. The truth of the matter is I would. I would forget my name again on several occasions. I would be found in a subway station, a metro station, DC, crying. Even months later, years later, because I forgot who I was, and I thought I was supposed to be in Alabama. Alabama doesn't have a metro system. So I was very confused when I came to, saw myself in uniform, and I was like, what the heck is going on? I was just crying. I was confused so much that I was just weeping. People thought I was having some PTSD episode on the train and stuff like that. And just couldn't explain where I was or what was happening.
My goodness, you're on the metro system. You've forgotten where you are. You're in uniform. Talk us through what it was like when the Army said that you weren't going to fly anymore.
I mean, I wish that's all they said. The Army actually said you can't be in the Army anymore. So I couldn't even process just not flying as much as my entire career was done. I had worn that uniform. I'd worn that uniform for years. I'd worn the uniform for, I mean, if you count the time that I was in high school wearing a JROTC uniform, it was like 20 years at that point with West Point and all. It was part of my identity. And so that really messed with me. Really, I had a doctor actually ask me at one point, you know, you've lost so much. What do you have left to live for? This is,
oh my God.
Dr. Walter Reed, Army doctors at their finest, right? But I remember I didn't even think about his question much. I just said, well, my eyes still work, right? And I was trying to think of something that I had. And I said, my eyes still work. My vision wasn't impaired like other people can. I was like, wait, that's all I have left to live for? And I kept thinking about that night, thinking about, wait, what is there left for? And that drove me into severe depression. That drove me into, I hadn't had any issues with depression before this incident. And it spiraled.
You lost your identity. I mean, you were an Apache helicopter pilot who was a commander, and now all of a sudden, this freak accident that didn't even happen in combat, it happens on the streets of Washington, D.C., getting accidentally hit by a police officer in his vehicle. I mean, how could you not be depressed?
You know, I think what exacerbates it even more is that I didn't want to get any help. I mean, I didn't want to even tell people that my injuries were coming from not combat, right? I have combat injuries. Like, that should be what I get help for. But what took me out was on the streets of DC. And so I was like, no, that treatment and everything else, that needs to go to the true warriors that deserve it. That's not me. I don't want to take up resources from war fighters. Don't give it to me. And I didn't want any. I didn't want help. I denied getting help for a really long time because I think something that all of us are prone to do, yes, in the military and even outside, is we compare ourselves to everyone else and we're like, my thing isn't as bad as this. I'm not worthy of this. I know someone else that needs this more than I do. And whatever stupid excuse I had in my own head at that point that kept me from doing things, I realized after years afterwards, looking back on it, the hardest thing I've ever had to do is ask for help. And my ego got in the way, maybe in a lot of ways. Besides me trying to say whatever else it was with others needing this, there might have been a pride thing there too. I didn't want to accept that I wasn't the same person after my injuries, that I need help, I needed to recover. This wasn't Gerald anymore. I had to realize it was Gerald 2.0. I'm always in pain. I can't run as fast as I used to. Thankfully, I can walk again now, and I can move my arms, and that's probably even why I'm more animated with them now, because I can be. But I'm not who I was pre-injury. That's okay. And I had to realize that's okay, and I also had to be okay saying that I needed help, and finally getting to the point where I can tell other people, not just, hey, it's okay to get help, but admitting to them, I did get help. I was one of those people that needed help. And no shame in that.
Of course, once again, like you said, in the military, we're always achieving for that next level, that next criteria of excellence. And so when it comes to injuries, like you said, oh, well, I'm not missing a leg or I'm not missing an arm. I just had a traumatic brain injury, so I must be fine. I'll get over this. we've got to get beyond this thought process that we aren't deserving of this help.
I mean, and how do you do that, right? How do you, I've wrestled with this so much. Was there a way that I could have done it sooner? And there's no way to really know that. What I've decided now, I at one point I was asked to speak on a mental health. I did so, but right before they were introducing me, they gave my walk-on water resume, right? All these great things I've done. And this is a mental health panel. And the first question they asked me is, what do you think is wrong with mental health today? And I told them, I was like, really, the way you introduced me, what you needed to actually say is, I've suffered from depression. I was suicidal. And let people know that every single person, if I asked anyone in a room to be like, hey, how many people, if you're mentoring someone, you would tell them, hey, if you need help, like, get help. And I want you to get help and I'll be there for you. And you can call me and all that other stuff. Everyone raised their hands, right? But I was like, how many of you actually tell people that you have gotten help and you have needed to do that and you will do that and you will call them those things? A lot of hands went down, right? Like we still have some stigmas around it. There's this thing of, yeah, it's good for you, but maybe not for me because I'm different in some type of way, or I don't need it the same way I know other people do. Whatever the reason, that's why it's become part of me to just let people know, yeah, I'm not immune to it. Yeah, I might have a walk-on water resume, but don't forget the parts that suffer from depression, suicide, and any one of us.
So I think a lot of that depression comes from losing your purpose. And unfortunately, you had to go through this traumatic experience to find that second chapter of service, to find that next level of purpose. The Bill of Rights Institute that you work at now, did you find them or did they find you?
You know, it was a combination, really. They had some things listed and I was looking through their stuff, and then they started learning some more about me, and the position they had listed was something that didn't fit me at all, but they realized that there could be something here really because of the life I've had. And then they saw some of the things I've worked on, that I talked about in my speaking side of things. And they realized there's a lot of similarities there, because what the Bill of Rights Institute does is we provide at no cost to teachers. We provide teachers and students what they need to teach civics. And that sounds like such a basic thing, but you have to realize that some schools don't even have civics as part of their curriculum. So anything a teacher wants to do to teach civics is on their own dime. And so we provide civics, American history, things that a social studies teacher would use at no cost to them. We make lesson plans, everything. We have over 80,000 educators using our materials right now. That means 8 million students are being served by us for our last checks. 6,000 no-cost civics and history resources are available to them on our website. Anyone can look at it. We make sure it's nonpartisan, which is extremely hard to do. So what we do is we make sure that, hey, we know whatever your preference is going to be, what bias you might be leaning into one way or another, so that we can actually make sure that we can have two people work on this that are of different point of views, and we have something straight down the middle that everyone can beat up on, right? And it does so many things that we've been able to see where now it doesn't matter what zip code you're in. I always think about that zip code that I was in, right? It doesn't matter what zip code that you might be in or your school's financial position or anything like that. We want every student and every teacher to have access to quality civics curriculum. Because for me, it's personal, right? I want to make sure that the next Gerald that's out there isn't lucky because of their zip code. They're lucky because their teacher is dedicated to them and has the resources that are going to make sure that they stand out the way they need to without them having to break their backs.
It's so important, Gerald. I mean, local politics are the foundation of our federal level politics. And so many people just assume, somebody else will do it. I don't need to participate. And my time on Capitol Hill, my last 3 years in the Pentagon, I worked on Capitol Hill, and I noticed myself educating people on all of these very basic civil liberties, what the Constitution is, what the Bill of Rights is. For instance, a lot of people don't realize that if you're watching CNBC or whatever the channel is that shows them standing at the podium and they're giving a speech, right? That's them allowing, that's their talking head moment for these sound bites that will be pushed on their TV channels, whether they're left or they're right. You know, they say, oh, look, you know, look what so-and-so is saying, you know, the hard charger. And you're like, there's no one actually there. They're not submitting a bill. This is just a chance for talking head speak. Another example is Ronnie Jackson from Texas. He put forward a bill calling Kamala the border czar, right? Well, that bill never got a sponsor. It died at step one, but now it's written, it's in congress.gov, you can see it, but nobody actually asks the critical questions of what is a border czar? And then when you actually go to congress.gov and you do some research, you're like, oh, this is just some guy that stood on the floor and said, you know, I have a proposal, and nobody seconded it, nobody sponsors it, and it dies. But then all of a sudden it's this talking point of, well, she's the border czar, she's the border czar. Capitol Hill said she's the border czar. And I'm just giving that example of her. There's plenty of examples from the other side as well. This is just the one that's coming to mind of recent. But, and then these executive orders. I mean, every president has executive orders. But people don't realize that that's not a law. That's just the president writing down on a piece of paper what they want to do. I mean, during the Obama administration, he knew he wasn't going to get a lot of people confirmed through Congress, so he started having executive orders naming czars for particular offices. So once again, the left does it as well as the right. But people on TV just think, oh, well, the president said that and they signed that document, so executive orders, go forth and conquer. Like, civics, you guys, your team, help me explain this to people. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, Mike, stay on there, brother, because you know what? That's what people are asking. When people were using our websites, like we were always checking website stats, what people are searching for, what terms, right? And one of the things that has been glaring since the beginning of the year was exactly what you said. What are executive orders was a big question we're asking on our website. Another one was, what does Congress do? And so these are legitimate things. What are checks and balances being a third one? And people are watching our content, and whether they're videos and otherwise, they're not all teachers also. Anyone can look at our stuff. You can go right now, log onto our website, and you can make your own account. Again, no cost at all. It's going to ask if you're a teacher just because I want to be able to count how many teachers we have so I can report that accurately, but I want everyone to use it. But people want information, and they want to know what works in our government and why isn't it maybe working the way, and also how should it work? Because again, that Constitution, that ideal that we should strive for, I mean, every time I hear anyone say, and I've heard it so many times, especially over the last 12 years in different ways, like, is this the end of the Constitution? You know what? As long as you got people like me and you, Mike, and the people we've served with, both of us say no. Right? Like, as soon as you hear that, it's like, no, because even the oath of office we took wasn't to a office or anything like that. It's to the Constitution. And it's to support and defend that document, that founding document, those ideals that, yeah, we don't have it all together all the time, but we can. And it's worth protecting. It's worth preserving. And this is something that even recently, I've been trying to highlight. I have my own series, our Honoring Service series at BRI, where I bring in veterans and we talk about what service and defending the Constitution means to them. These videos have already gotten thousands of views, just started this year. And it's something that we use to remind students, especially, that service comes in all shapes of things. Yes, we highlight veterans, but that's the thing. In most cases, they're veterans. They're doing something else now, but they can't stop serving. Because when we took that uniform off, it didn't mean that we took the values off. it didn't mean that we stopped living up to the oath of office. And the truth of the matter is, even though me and you wore the uniform, we all could wear the values. And that, I think, is the beauty of how our warrior class has continued to develop and will always serve this country.
Well, I'm glad that your new platform is getting views, because sadly, all the clickbait is focused on, traumatic, crazy, this person died or this blew up, or so all these good news stories, the algorithms keep them at the bottom. So I'm really glad to hear that you are making a difference, and it's your footprint is growing from that perspective. And I just want to leave you with this, being a kid from Queens, New York, who had a chance to go to West Point, one of the most elite academies, gets his MBA from Georgetown, was an Apache helicopter pilot. That's one hell of a career. What advice do you have to those kids that look at you and think, man, I wish I could do that someday, but I don't have the money to go to school, but I don't have the capacity to learn how to fly a helicopter? What kind of stories, what kind of inspiration can you provide to those kids?
Yeah, Mike, I don't care how old you are, my advice is the same. Forge forward. You can go through life, and you know what? I'll tell you, what if 3 stages where you are right now? My friend would always tell me, you're either right in the middle of some type of trouble, you're getting out of some type of trial or tribulation, or you're about to get into some type of trial, tribulation, and struggle. The universal truth of life. And I'm sorry to be the person to spoil that for you. You had known that, but you can go into these furnaces and yeah, you can absolutely melt. That's an option. Or you can go through this hot period in life and you can get heated up. You can even be banged against an anvil. Hopefully, if you do it the right way, you can come out, go in steel and come out this refined sword, something sharper. You may not even know why you have developed this sword yet. It may not manifest itself for years. It may never manifest itself to you, but it's there for a reason. I get asked all the time, leaders are born or made. I'll always say they're formed, because it is that trial and tribulation you have will make you. Never teach someone empathy. Hopefully they can recognize that those pivotal moments in their life are the ones that really created who they can be as leaders. That's why my advice is always for people to remember all those successful points they've had along the way, use that to forge.
Brother, thank you so much for coming on the show, because even though we have not met in person and we served in completely different capacities in different services, we are cut from the same cloth. And there's so many of us out there that we need to continue to have our voices heard to try and make a difference. And man, I love what you guys are doing at the Bill of Rights Institute. I would love to hear more. Heck, I would love to be on your show. So let's connect afterwards. And I really do appreciate everything you're doing, Gerald.
That's right, Mike. Again, we haven't met yet, but there's still time, and we'll make sure to do that. And you definitely will be on our show.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for